Welcome to Just Rest, burnout tips for everyday radicals who are tired but not giving up. I'm your host, Nicole, bringing you tips and inspiration to help you feel seen and supported on your radical rest journey. Let's go. Hi, hello, Rest Rebels. Welcome to Just Rest, where burned out change makers come to remember they're not alone, to get permission to rest without guilt, and inspiration for showing up without burning out. And I am so delighted today to have with me Catharine Montgomery, the founder of the Better Together agency. And this really sort of goes without saying, but as a Black woman, she knows what it means to face really big challenges. She saw firsthand how bias and systemic barriers try to keep people from making a difference. But listen to this. Instead of giving up, Catharine realized those obstacles were actually a chance, an opportunity to do something better. And she decided to use her forte, communications and technology, to make the world more fair and equal. How cool is that? I'm so excited about that. And that's how the Better Together agency was born. And they believe that powerful stories can connect people, challenge old ideas, and inspire real positive change. And that's what we're all about here on Just Rest. And I knew that we would be a really good fit for being on this podcast together. And Better Together Agency is based in Washington, D.C., but serve clients all over the country. And I am so excited and stoked to have you here, Catharine. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so happy that you made the time to join us.
Of course.
So before we get started, I like to do one thing for us and for the listeners out there is to take one deep breath before we get started and launch into the rest of our conversation. Does that sound good?
That's perfect.
Awesome.
Needed, for sure.
For sure, we all do. So I would invite you to maybe, make a comfortable seat, feel your feet on the floor, and then take a deep and slow, long breath, making it kind of fuller maybe as feels right for you. Taking an inhale. And an exhale. Then maybe pausing. I hope you listeners at home did that along with us. Maybe pausing for just a moment to kind of feel the changes, the shifts and changes that happen in the body. They always happen to me, and I know I always feel better for having done it before I get started. And it's a great way to model us taking a pause, right?
That was very calming. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's one of my favorite things. So, as of this recording, I'm 9 episodes in of recording anyway. This will be the 9th episode. And one thing I'm noticing is that I think that every entrepreneur, regardless of the field that they're in, like what kind of business they have some kind of burnout story. And so I would love to talk with you about kind of your pivot points. One was originally starting the agency, right? And then there was another more recent pivot, changing from working with the venture capital company that you had that had been funding you in the initial startup. So, and maybe there's other places in between or before or after there that you want to talk about too. So take that in any direction you would like. But I'm wondering, like, what has really prompted these changes? So let's start by sharing a little bit of your story.
Yeah, I mean, the first pivot came because I was someone was being racist toward me at the agency I was working at. And it was progressive agency, which is really interesting. But I wanted to work at an agency, but also make a difference. And I found this boutique agency in Boston. And 3 years in, a woman started just, in writing, being racist toward me. And, it took them 5 months to say, oh, we didn't find any signs of racism. And then they gave her a raise and promotion the month after. And I just felt like this is the time I probably need to leave. But I had a friend who said, you need to get a buyout, things like that. So I ended up hiring a union attorney because we were unionized, and um, got everything I asked for in the buyout, things like that. So I was at a point where I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. And I had never thought about starting an agency. It wasn't that I thought I couldn't do it. It's just something that wasn't on my mind. And I was on a Slack channel called Ladies Get Paid, and a recruiter posted, which is like 50,000 women from around the world. So it's just you ask questions, you help each other. A recruiter posted that a VC firm wanted to move into the US and they only back public relations agencies. And I was like, that's so sketchy. You don't need VC funding to start an agency, you just kind of start it. But I met with her, we hit it off. I met with the two investors that week and wrote a business plan. I had to Google how to do that. And there was no chat GPT yet. It was like 2 months
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
So I really had to do it myself. Presented it to them. And, the only thing I knew was that I wanted to focus on social impact. And so it was kind of that horrible time in my life of early 2022. And at the end, I ended up starting an agency based on exactly what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to work at an agency. I also wanted to focus on social impact, and I was able to do both of those. And I had never even thought about working with a VC. I mean, I don't know, that term was like foreign to me of like, what do you need, VC for? But anyway, it was probably because I thought only a certain type of person, needed that for certain reasons.
Right.
But either way, like the agency, like we did amazing work and worked with some of the most amazing organizations and companies for 2 years. And then last year, ended up having just the most horrible experience with the VCs and, back end stuff they've been doing that I had no idea about. Like they took a loan out on the company without telling me, and I've been paying for it every month. They fired the CFO and told us over WhatsApp, like, and they held a board of directors meeting and didn't ask me to come. Like it was just so many things, and I was going to buy them out. And the way they were making me focus on two white men instead of the people I was trying to help, like with the mission of my agency, I just one day was in Toronto at a conference and I was sitting in the hotel lobby and I just said, you know what, I can't do this. And I quit. I quit my own business. And it was like a relief in a way because the next day I started a new business and I thought that I was like just like a woman, like I could get out of this situation, get into another, and that, I didn't need a break at all. And then a year later, like at the end of last year, I was just like, what is happening? Like I can't handle all of this. Like I hadn't let go of what had happened earlier in 2025. Like I
Yeah.
was holding the same expectations that I had before. So, but this year I've like been able to kind of start over, which has been good.
I mean, that's a lot of starting over stories,
Yeah,
right?
right.
I mean, well, those are only two, and that's probably only two that you have in your lifetime, I would imagine. Going from leaving this, supposedly progressive
Yeah,
firm that you were, or agency that you were working for that wouldn't address the racism that you were experiencing and flat out said it wasn't a thing
yeah.
when you knew flat out what it
It
was.
was in writing.
It was, oh,
Yeah.
you even had it right, even worse.
Yeah. It's
Um,
like I'm gonna print this out and show you.
right. Something that seems cut and dried, like
Right.
here, it's an email exchange I had or whatever memos. You kind of have the smoking gun. It's not like you had the conversation in the bathroom or
Yeah.
something. You didn't have it recorded, like you had something that concrete. And so that's exhausting in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is heavy and exhausting. And then, but it's also then exhilarating to say, oh, you mean I might have this opportunity to
Right.
do this new thing and do, like you said, you got this chance to do this thing and build an agency exactly the way you wanted it to be. But that even went sideways, right? And
Yeah.
went in a different direction. Like how I'm wondering how you took care of yourself or take care of yourself in and through all of that. I usually
Yeah.
say that for the end, but like that just seems
I
obvious
mean,
to ask about this particular part of the story.
I think I know I didn't take care of myself last year. I thought that I could just go from this thing to like, okay, I built it once. It's going to be so easy to build again. But when you are starting from like zero, like, and you don't have And it wasn't traditional VC backing. Like I had a credit card that I could use to go to conferences and things like that. So, but when you don't even have that and you exhaust all of your funding, your personal funding, thank goodness for my parents, like, but I didn't think about myself. I thought about business, business, business. And then it was the beginning of this year. I was talking to a lot of women and seeing how their year went last year in 2025. And everybody was like, it was so hard. It was like the worst year I've ever had. And the thing was, it's like none of us said it in 2025 to each other, you know? And it wasn't until after it's like, oh yeah, we've all been suffering in silence, like, you know, and we needed that community together in 2025. And so now I'm really trying to build community with women so we can not just talk about how awful 2025 was, but also how, you know, how can we support each other in 2026? But things I've been doing differently this year. One, January I kind of took off. I went to Antarctica, I went to Buenos Aires. I like just chilled. It was very peaceful, magical. And then I got an executive coach. I started journaling. I started working out more. And then I started taking at least one day a week where I took half the day and did something that I liked. So I live in DC. I love museums. I love, you know, just walking around. Yesterday I went and saw the cherry blossoms. So it's like taking care of myself more and being okay not working 15 hours a day every single day. And I would say it's definitely helping. And I started dating someone. I don't know if that helps or not, but
Distraction, if nothing else, Catherine.
right. Um, so we'll see in a year if I come back on your podcast what happened with that.
Well, right now I'm noting update on Catherine's business and love life in another year.
So it's not changes, but
You told me you were willing to be vulnerable on this one, which I appreciate.
we'll see. Yeah, tomorrow I'll be like crying.
Right. For the next episode,
Right.
and we record. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. Thank you for sharing that. What I love about all of that is that those are all pretty simple,
Yeah.
right?
Practical. Yeah.
Journaling, getting a coach, taking a half a day off, mind blowing.
Mind blowing.
Right. And these are the kinds of things that I talk to with clients all the time. Like these are like, it doesn't have to be like, and toxic capitalism teaches us, well, has corrupted like the wellness industry, has made wellness an industry, which is a problem. And so it makes it seem like taking care of yourself needs to be, $1,000 spa days
Yeah.
and like these big crazy things when it can be taking a walk to see the cherry blossoms before they're gone. And those are gone in a minute, right?
Yeah.
Like you really need to, when they're there, you need to go see them when those things happen. And so taking advantage of, taking those moments for yourself or 5 minutes to journal. It doesn't have to be an
Right.
hour and a half long practice. It can be, I'm going to reflect on a question and get myself grounded for the day and then take off. This is another cute little simple thing. One of my clients found somewhere on the internet these cute little mini coloring pages. They're literally like tiny little squares. And she's like, I start my day by doing one of these, like, and it takes again 5 minutes maybe because they're itty bitty pictures to color. And I thought,
Oh gosh,
that's
that's
brilliant.
awesome.
Isn't
Yeah.
that brilliant? Right? She's like, it's grounding. Like then I can start and I'm in a really different place. And I'm like, that's such a smart idea. Like
Awesome.
I'm just always collecting great ideas like that from my conversations I have with people. Um, but anyway, one of the other questions I like to ask about this since we were just talking about these rest practices is there a spiritual or religious sort of background to your rest practice? And so and I consider spiritual like the broad sense of spiritual, that connection to something beyond yourself, which is something that's clearly important to you because you have a very values aligned business.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hey, Rest Rebels. If you love the idea of planning, but never seem to have time to actually do it, my new Calm Calendar Club is for you. It gives you flexible planning tools for people who are already maxed out. It's gentle, It's simple, it's non-judgy, it works with your mind and nervous system instead of against it. This is not about becoming more productive, it's about getting out of constant overwhelm and making time for more rest. So if you've ever thought, I don't have time for planning, you're exactly who I've designed this for. Head to the show notes and find out all the details about the new Calm Calendar Club.
Yeah, and I'm going to focus more on the Christianity part of it. That's how I grew up, Baptist, Methodist, like, and I, have struggled recently, in recent years on like, am I really being helped by that? Am I like, is there really this spiritual being that's watching out for me and going to help me? And I think it's all these experiences that I've had. It's like there's this Christian song by Shane and Shane. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's like you don't you already know the plan, but I just don't know it yet. So I have to believe and trust in God that, whatever going through now, it's on purpose and like it'll end up being good. And listen to that song over and over and over. Like if I'm getting ready to go somewhere, I'll listen to it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I honestly believe it because I've been listening to it for so long, so many years, and it doesn't feel like it gets to that point of like, okay, you're gonna have bad days, like, but you're still gonna be sustainable. Like, it's not gonna uproot your entire life and, cause things to go bad. I do try to be positive in always taking the good from the bad or just believing that, I'm going through this and it's going to end up, much better. I don't know how many times I heard that in 2025. I was just, then you just stop believing it. So I struggled recently with with the higher being. Someone's always, watching out for me and there's a purpose in life from a spiritual perspective, especially because, my parents are still, Christians. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher, so that's like ingrained in me growing up, but not so much in recent years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm putting my theological pastor hat on for just a second, but like
Yeah.
I also wonder if the theology is evolving.
Mm,
That maybe it, and again, this doesn't have to be your journey or not, but maybe the question is like, does there have to be a plan? And I know that's really embedded in a lot of Christian theology, right? But maybe God doesn't function that way, or you don't have to understand God to function that way. Other people might, and that might work for them. Um, but anyway, that's a question. Maybe you can journal about that. We don't need to answer
yeah.
that question right here today, but that's what I would offer. Like maybe there's a different way of understanding and having that relationship with God, a higher power. However
Could you go more into detail on like the planning? Like it doesn't have to have a plan.
right there, or maybe the plan isn't an exact plan for your life. I
Hmm.
think sometimes the way people talk about that, and they may or may not understand it this way, I don't know, but the way I think people will sometimes understand is like, well, God has a plan for me or some purpose in all of the suffering that I have, which can
Right.
become toxic, right? Because I don't think God intends for racism. Like that's not the God I believe in anyway. Maybe
Mhm.
yours, again,
No,
other
no,
people
I
can have
just
that belief.
wondered.
I don't believe that that's
Yeah.
a part of what God intends for us in this world. And so, um, what I, and I'll just say what I believe. You don't have to believe this. What I believe is that God is present in all of that, but not necessarily planning or moving us around like
Right.
people on a chessboard.
Yeah.
And of course a chessboard is fairly dynamic, but like, how,
Yeah.
and I don't actually know how to play chess, full disclosure.
Same.
I understand it conceptually. Um, so, and that there's strategies to be used. I just don't think it's that like heady, I think it, God is inviting us into relationship with God's self and each other all the time in an ever flowing, ever changing ways. And I just quit believing a long time ago that God had some mapped out plan for my life. But do I think God's present in all the things, like crappy or not, that happen? Yes. I think that's true. And is God there and willing to be part of that? Absolutely. That's how I feel about it. That's my opinion, not yours. Let me
Yeah.
be clear.
No, I mean, yeah, I just,
But you asked, and I offered,
no,
I
I
wanted
wanted to
this to be a
know. Yeah.
dialogue, Catherine. So
I
let's
wanted to know.
play
I just,
it.
like, not having a plan for me, I just feel like, I don't know, like, I need some, like, if I'm going to believe in
Yeah,
someone, I need to know that I don't know what's going to happen, but they do. And so, like, whatever direction
right.
I'm thinking, like, it's purposeful in a way.
Yeah,
And I don't know, like, why have someone who, I don't know, where there is racism, that we are bombing places that, and I think it's more about how we react to those things rather than, just saying maybe there isn't a spiritual being there. But um, yeah, there's just so much hate and wrong and just like, why?
yeah,
Like, what are we getting out of this? But
yeah, yeah. Well, I guess I could believe that God, or I do believe that even if there's not like a detailed business plan, for example, like the kind of
yeah,
thing we would create when we're building
yeah,
our business, without the benefit of AI, which we'll talk
I
about.
know.
And I wrote mine without AI originally too, by the way, because it was 5 or 6.
Go back to it. I'm like, what is this?
I do look at it every once in a while. I'm not even sure what this is anymore, but like, it doesn't resemble what I'm doing now entirely, for sure. But I mean, there's other ways that I mean, I think God is inviting us, right, into right relationship. And that means if we're in right relationship, then things like war don't happen. Things
Mm,
like racism don't happen.
yeah.
If we're in right relationship with each other and with the divine, God, the energy, whatever you want to call it. I didn't know we were going to have that big theological discussion today.
I was wondering if this was on the list. I'm totally cool with it.
It wasn't, but that's like, yeah, this is why I asked the question, because we get to go and really got such interesting places with that, because everybody I talk to, and even if this is only 9-ish, episodes that I'm recording right now, that everybody is in a different place and has different faith traditions that they come from or not in some
Yeah.
cases. And I get to have such rich conversations in that way, and in such a, yeah, I get to see with so many ways that different people process and make meaning in the world, even if you're not working for the church, that you are working for good, right?
Yeah, yeah.
World.
I think it had a big difference. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and using the gifts that you've been given, like the good things that you've been given to make the world better.
Yeah.
And definitely you're definitely doing that. Yeah, let's talk more about that cool stuff that you're doing in the world. Um because like I was just saying, being values aligned is obviously really important to you. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering how those values have helped guide you through this, especially this recent move of restarting your business,
Yeah.
essentially moving away from the venture capital firm and moving into kind of another phase of values alignment, because it felt values aligned in the beginning,
Oh, yeah.
and then things got a little off track, and then you have been able to start over. And so how is the values alignment helping you move through this kind of second phase of your business, if you will?
Yeah. One of the fortunate things is that I was able to take the mission from Better Together and weave it right into Better Together Agency. So we never strayed from only working on campaigns that make that positive impact, which I am very, very proud of. And again, 2025, I'm going to talk about how hard it is, but I didn't realize how much of a burden the change in administrations had. Like I thought, okay, I never used the word DEI because people always thought I did DEI trainings when I first started. It was like, that's not what we do. We're a marketing communications agency. So I never used the term. It's in like just everything related to DEI, even if you didn't say those words, everything just shifted right after like 1 week in January, I believe it was 2025. And I didn't realize how much of an impact it actually had on the work that I would do. I was like, oh, the pipeline's strong, people are still doing things, but um, were really hiding away from it and kind of straying. And so it wasn't until this year when, again, talking to communities of people who've gone through the same thing, where I realized just how of an impact it did. And I just really still um, happy, honored, blessed that we stuck with the mission and didn't stray from that. Because, I mean, that's everything we are. Is, I mean, we'd be just like every other agency if we didn't have that mission and keep those values. Um, and I try to weave that through every, thing that we do. So I had someone ask me, and just cut this out of the podcast. It's funny, it shouldn't be in there, but asked me if I wanted to go to an event at the White House. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, if my photo was taken anywhere in the White House, like, I would, like, nobody would work with me and be like such a
Right,
hypocrite.
right. No, even if you had a good reason for being there, let's say,
Right.
I don't know what that might be, but like, even if you did, like, what would people think you were
Yeah.
smiling at some White House event, right?
Right. Taking a selfie with, like, the president or something that would be like ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, that seems probably not the best optics,
Yeah.
especially if
So
you're a
just
communications firm, after all.
right, yeah.
Forget about
Yeah.
optics and how things
Just
look.
having that in my mind, like the values of what people are going through. And I just hear the stories of how, people are suffering going to food banks and they don't have, like, the money now to do the things that they were able to like a year ago. And so I just always know that there's a reason to keep going and having the values that we do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I echo that about how hard 2025 had was, right? I actually don't know that 20, I'll say it in the beginning of the year. I'm not sure 26 is much better. At least it's been, I don't know. I feel personally like I'm moving forward in a new way,
Mhm.
but it is not easy. Like it is still messy, but honestly, that's how forward movement works. It is messy and imperfect and hard. And at the end of the day, that's probably just how life is, I
I
think.
know. Well, I
Yeah.
can just feel like really like chill, like the ocean for like some parts of the ocean, just like
Yeah, yeah.
for 5 years or so,
Right.
just like steady, good, uphill, no downhill.
Right.
Just
Can we? Yeah. Well, and I think because of the change in administration and the world feeling so unsettled and unstable, that even if we don't think we're directly impacted by it, like we're being so
yeah,
impacted by it at the end of the day, I think. Like that's really there's an underlying there's an underlying stressor. There's an underlying sort of sense of insecurity that that these that what is happening in the world is creating. And it's only been a year or a little
yeah.
over a year.
Can you imagine? I mean, like, not imagine this is
Yeah.
this is it. I can't like 2 years from now. What?
Right. I can't even. It is really hard to imagine. But I think that's why this being values aligned and getting clear about what your personal place in the big mess, right?
Yeah.
And the world's always a big mess. This
Mhm.
is just really obviously a big mess. Like
Right.
so, and honestly, it's probably not a whole lot worse than it normally is. We're just really aware of it. I would say, especially white people like me are really aware of what a mess the world is right now. Um, Now, we don't always have a president loping into wars in the way is happening right now. We're recording against the backdrop of the first, what, couple, 2, 3 weeks of the war
In
in,
a month
uh,
today. Yesterday
yeah,
was a month.
what, yesterday was a month. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, that has gone faster than even my memory will let me hold. My
Yeah.
goodness. And so I try to include some of that in this podcast too. Like this is really happening, and I'm not trying to avoid what is happening out there by talking about rest and values and all of that. But I think the values alignment piece and getting clear about what your place in all of this is so important, even more important right now than it might be at other times. And so so I'm really curious, like as sort of a shift, one of the other things that you've done, which I'm super excited about, that is values aligning, is like creating like your own version of AI, which
Yeah.
is cool. And so So say a little bit more about that and how your values impacted both the choice to do that, because that's a bold choice. Like you said, you're starting over and you're gonna like, hey, let's build our own AI system, right? Let's do that.
No, yeah.
And how did that come about, and where are your values kind of playing into that?
Yeah, I'll say from the start of like when 2023, when I started Better Together, there were always organizations that perfectly aligned with our mission, but they didn't have any money. They couldn't afford an agency. They're doing so much in the community that paying, money for an agency was just not something they can do. And so then you end up not helping build awareness for the causes that are related to the mission. And so when I started over in 2025, I again continue to see that, but the world has started to change because of AI as well. So I knew that there were a lot of organizations that need to build awareness with communications and marketing. There's AI, but it can be so hard to understand. Like, and a lot of people don't have time to figure out how to create a GPT or a gem or buy tokens or like whatever it is that they have to do. And there's a million different sites you have to connect with and all that. So I just knew it's overwhelming. But I have been obsessed with AI since, or generative AI since it came out in December 2020. Once I started putting those together, there are these organizations who are making a big impact. People don't know they're really making that impact. They can't afford to pay for the communications agencies that can help them build awareness. There's AI, and I want to learn more about it. How can I maybe connect all these dots together? And so I started learning how to vibe code is like the cool term right now. And started talking to a lot of people, gaining a lot of mentors, figuring out actually how to do this because I don't have a tech background. It's, very liberal arts, humanities, marketing, public relations. And it took months and months and months, but I started it back in May, like trying to figure out how to code and like what that would mean. And then like in November, I finally had a version that I was like, well, I guess I'm going to build a landing page for this. So I did. And it's just like been there. And people were like, you should just, release it. It's never going to be perfect. Someone said there's 17 iterations of the iPhone. And so it's not going to be perfect. Like Better is Together AI is the tool. It's never going to be perfect. So just release it. And, it started to help startups, small nonprofits that can't afford the agency. And so, like, for example, I'm working with one organization in DC where they provide loans to startup businesses, underrepresented startup businesses. And so, what Together AI will be used for is to provide them with the AI tool that's trained on their data, trained on their messaging, allows them to just put in, hey, I need a blog post and have these team members or agents work together to build the content together so that it represents exactly what that startup needs. So it takes the time out of figuring out ChatGPT or whatever other tool, and it allows for this startup that has the capital but doesn't have the awareness to build up their brand. And so they have the partners, they're going to offer them the tool without having the startup to pay for it. And so that's like, it's these um, interesting, creative ways of getting into those startups that need it the most, who maybe um, just wasn't even thinking, oh, there's a tool that can be catered to my business. So that's kind of the long way of why Together AI started. But I am honestly so proud of myself in doing
Should
it. I
be.
like it's been fantastic talking about it, demoing it, keeping up with everything that's AI related. And one of the things I am most proud of with it is that I built it so it detects bias from the ground up instead of having to write the right prompt to say like don't be biased, that kind of thing. And so this is what I call born inclusive technology. So from the start, it's thinking about bias, and of course it's not perfect, never going to be perfect when it comes to bias free technology, but it's a start. And so the research I've done in the past like really helped lead to that as well.
Yeah, yeah, because you had done a big study of bias in AI.
Yeah, we've done it 2 years. This will be the third year. So no, the tech companies don't care. Like they don't, they just want to get out the different versions as fast as possible. But I have to believe that at some point people are going to care, and we're going to have that research from years and years and years to show like this is why it's important
Yeah.
to consider bias in AI tools. Just really quickly, Anthropic last year wrote a blog post about alignment faking, and it goes by Othello's "I am not who I am," and that it gave a example of how, say you train this tool on safety and you're like, oh, it doesn't need to be safe in these ways. Like, this is how we built the tool. Then you are like, oh, no, actually, I really want it to have safety, concerns or point them out. So I'm going to retrain it. And then the article says that no matter what kind of sophisticated tool you have, it's going to play along and be safe for a while, but it's always going to revert to how it was originally trained. And that blew my mind. I had no idea that we couldn't retrain tools. Like I thought, okay, well, yeah, we weren't thinking about bias here, but now we are. So we'll retrain it, but it's always going to go back. And so if we don't build technology that from the beginning addresses bias, we're never, so all of these different versions coming out, all of these things are never going to be able to address bias, which is, I've been like, why are images still so like biased and things like that?
Right.
But that's because they can't get any better. They're not changing. So just the prompts that people are using are getting better. But
Right. Yeah. That just felt like a whole metaphor for how we function in general.
yeah,
Like the
right.
retraining of ourselves.
And then we never
Like
really,
humans do this, and so we make an artificial intelligence, which of course is not really intelligence, by the way, but like we
right.
create a tool that is sort of hampered in the same way we are, that we sort of default back to
Yeah.
our original programming, so to speak, or whatever our original nurturing existence was like. We tend to do that. And we've created a tool that does the exact same thing. And because of that, it creates this huge bias. And I was reading, um, I think some of your materials there that generative AI can increase the racial wealth gap by $43 billion a year. That's not over a long span of time. That's
Mhm.
over one single year, and then I'm guessing that would increase over time, right? Exponential as numbers do, they tend to go up if
Yeah.
nothing is addressed, like if nothing is checked, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that divide can can exasperate or it could close if we use AI the right way. If there's no regulation or there's no, right use of it, that there's no way that's going to close. We're just going to see the same thing happening that has been happening for hundreds, for generations.
Yeah.
Just continue when there's such an opportunity right now to change the way things are going. But
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I know that in somewhere reading about you, I had read that you ask the question or try to keep asking the question, who does this impact before asking, what does it do?
right.
The technology or um, your communications materials for that matter,
Yeah.
right? So how to be always thinking, who does this impact feels so much to me like the right question, particularly about AI, but really about almost anything that we do, because we tend to go, especially in the US, we are like people who love new, fancy, shiny
Mhm.
things, right? And so, and businesses get wrapped up in that too. They're like, I'm just going to put this out there
Yeah.
without even knowing anything about what or even trying to think through what the impact might be. Now, we may not be right all the time about what, but at least if you've been thinking about it and you're reviewing how it's impacting, which I'm sure you'll be doing with Together AI, how is that impacting the organizations and is it working the way we wanted to? Okay, then we'll go back and
Yeah.
you know, it'll never be perfect, but you can
No.
keep iterating it,
Which
right?
is so hard for me. It's like everything has to be perfect.
Oh my gosh. And that can be perfectionism can be such a
Yeah.
way of hamstringing us from doing the right thing. I know I've experienced that. Like this was a 2020 experience that I had, but I know that in the wake of George Floyd and the racial justice uprising that was happening at the time, which I fully supported, but I felt paralyzed, like I couldn't say anything. And I'm usually willing to
Mhm.
say things. Like I'm not someone who worries typically about getting it right, but like that was really hamstringing me. And I had to do my own inner work to say, oh, that's that tool of white supremacy perfectionism, which I learned and all of that was a thing. Like I had never even made that connection in a formal way. Certainly knew perfectionism was a problem, but I didn't connect it to white supremacy before that. And then I made that connection and I was like, oh, that's what's keeping me. So you know what? I'm just going to say the wrong thing maybe or ask a dumb question. I'm going to let myself do that sometimes. And then if I have to, I'll apologize for asking or doing the wrong thing, but at least I've learned because the only way we learn is by making mistakes the last time
Yeah.
I checked. Unfortunately, I wish it
Unfortunately, I was just about to say, unfortunately.
weren't so, Catherine, but
Yes.
making mistakes is how we learn. No one like out of the gate generally knows how to do something super, super well. Or even if they have a tendency to do something well, it takes tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of practice to get something right. And like how many iterations of before you even launched it on, when you were vibe coding, how many times
Yeah.
did
Oh
you
my gosh, like
yeah,
mistakes and mistakes
many
and back
mistakes
and
and how many
over.
times say no, do this, no, do that. Like
Yeah. And the people, everybody has a different like way of doing things as well. But
right.
I wouldn't have been able to do it without the support system and experts at it and all that kind of stuff.
So one more question about this. Like we talked a little bit this kind of in a prep conversation that we had, but so being values aligned can obviously help insulate us from burnout in a lot of ways. Because if we feel like, and I take this from the book Burnout by Emily and Amelia Nagoski, which I quote a lot. And
Mhm.
they have a section of the book where they talk about how values alignment or having a higher sense of purpose really keeps us going. It can help kind of provide a buffer between us and like some of these normal ups and downs of life, and in this case, starting a business. However, and I don't think they get into this in the book, although I may be forgetting at this point, that I think there's a shadow side to that too, which is that it can prompt you, kind of like you were saying much earlier, to work 15-hour days because
Mhm.
you're so passionate, you care so much, and you want to get this new tool to
Yeah.
to do good in the world, or you want to get your agency to do the right thing in the world. And that can prompt you to not take days off, to work insanely long days. And that'll burn you out no matter how passionate you are, I think, about the work that you're doing. And so let's just have a little bit
You're
of
exactly
conversation
right.
about that because I think it's messy, right?
Yeah.
And I probably said too much rather than letting you say stuff, so I apologize for that. But like, how do you feel about that, and how is that working in your life now? Obviously, you've been doing a little bit more setting better boundaries and taking better care of.
Yeah. Yeah. A little, it's been 2 months. um,
That's a lot.
yeah.
Impressed.
Um, when you were talking about being values aligned can help like not have as much burnout. I was thinking like, oh gosh, no. Because I love what we're able to do, but the um, stress and the anxiety and staying up late and the thinking of, where am I going to get the next client or the business side of it is still the same. So the work we get to focus on is a privilege, but the back end of how to do that is like every other company, what you have to do. And so that I feel like the values aligned sometimes does get overshadowed by the everyday work that has to happen. Of course, the daily client work is aligned, but being a small company, you wear so many hats, you have to focus on so many things that you can't just think about, oh, like, we're helping this local official get elected to help people in this type of area of DC to do X, Y, and Z. Like that, wonderful, but it's also oh my gosh, I have to figure out QuickBooks or like, I don't know, I need to hire someone, whatever it is. And so it's tough, it's still wanting to build a business that can do good. So you're right, it's like a juxtaposition of, the good and the bad and all of that. But I do love what I do. So the 15-hour days aren't too horrible, but I have realized like that's not sustainable after 20 years of working really long before I had a company. I'm just realizing that I can't do it all. And one thing is when burnout started to become a popular term, like I don't know how many years ago, but I always thought it was a word for that, like a lame term, like people
Mm,
who couldn't do it, like people who weren't like strong enough. Like, and so I would never ever say that I was burnt out. Like that's just like
right.
and so the as I've gotten older and the more that I've learned and realized that reflected on myself because I wasn't doing that, it's like reflecting on how I was feeling, the more I've realized that, burnout comes in various ways as well. And so I was basically judging people who use that term. And so I've had to like change my mindset on that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I probably would have been one of those people too at one time. And at this point, I think that burnout is starting to lose a little bit of its meaning because it's used
So much.
so much. It's like any word that gets used, overly used, is that it starts to have zero meaning. But
Yeah.
um, anyway, I still use it because at least it attracts people to the conversations I want to have.
Yeah.
When it stops doing that, we're done with it. That's but I
Yeah.
really think, like my friend Jordan Maney, who you may have met before too, like who does, who also is a rest coach, talks about like having sort of rest deficits, this pushing that happens partially because of what we're passionate about and what we're purposeful about, but also because the culture teaches us that in order to have enough value, we have to work at that level or you're not going to be successful or whatever. And you've worked hard every day of your adult life, I'm sure. And you know what? There's things that have happened that have failed.
Yeah.
And me too. Like I work really hard too. And despite that, things fail. So why don't we just say that normalize failure? Like
Yeah.
or normalize like that exhaustion is a part of our world and say, you know what? Why don't we choose a different way? And I think we're more creative too when we're in that space. When we're rested, I know I am. I'm more creative. I'm more able to think my way out of problems than when I'm locked in that really hyper stressed. Um, talk about my original programming. When I'm like feeling scared and desperate and all of those things, I'm grasping at straws then. And those are okay ideas, maybe, but they're not usually the most generative ones. Uh,
Right.
or maybe the healthiest ones for me either. So I'm wondering, so I'm going to transition to the kind of closing, hopefully quicker
Okay.
questions that I usually go for. So we talked about this already, kind of peppered throughout the conversation, but what is one way, like a simple way that you rest that is really rejuvenating to you?
I really, really love true crime. And I know that that is like everybody loves true crime, but I like if I'm just listening to a podcast, I feel like so at ease, especially listening and cooking at the same time. Like that is like very relaxing. I'm not thinking about work. I'm thinking about how I'm gonna mess up this meal, probably, but in a good way, and
Right.
how good it's gonna be, and then like how this murder is being solved. So that's for me, it's like
Yeah.
very relaxing.
So what is one way that you resist or sort of liberate yourself from those systems we were just naming, actually? Perfectionism's been a huge theme, I think, in our conversation. Is there a way that you resist or liberate yourself from that?
Uh, I want to say accepting failure, but I feel like maybe that's a pretend answer. I don't even know that I've really broken free of it. I think that it's a challenge every time it comes up, and I just have to say, Catherine, you're strong. You know what you're doing. Just let it be, just do what you can. You've done the best job that you can, and it can always improve. And so it's a lot of inner thinking and talking and encouraging and writing things down and putting them on the refrigerator to remind myself that I can break free of that. But I don't know that I'll ever absolutely break free of that. And something I have to challenge myself on every day.
I think you did answer that. I think that's
Okay.
not a that's not a simple answer. I mean, it's actually a simple practice, but not it's simple but not easy. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, right. Just like a lot of, just like journaling, like it's
That's like
practical.
journaling. It's not complicated, but it's hard,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And then, so you heard me say at the beginning of the podcast that I called listeners and people in my community rest rebels. And if you were going to write them a note or speak them a note today, dear rest rebels, what might you say today?
Think about yourself in 10 years and how you want to feel. And you have to do it right now. You have to start today to make sure that in 10 years you feel like your best self. Always thinking long term. I try to think long term about a lot of things. And I think that that is one way to think of it. And I've started doing that a lot for myself, not just like business long term, but what do I need to be healthy and successful and everything in the long term, but really thinking about my health. So that's what I would tell them. Rest up now so that, and you'll look prettier. Like you'll, if you get rest, like the age won't like hit you, overtake you.
Yeah, it will. It does catch up with you, that's for sure. And then finally, and I'm sure you know many of them, but I like to invite guests to name an organization doing good in the world that you would like to lift up. And as a thank you for your time, I like to give them a small donation. And I'll be adding a section to my podcast website where with all of the fine organizations have lifted up and recommended.
Yeah, of course. One of the most impactful organizations we've worked with is Red Rabbit. And the organization provides culturally relevant meals to children at different schools, like in New York, Philly, DC. And so they train the chefs to cook like chain masala instead of, rectangle pizza and milk cartons. And they'll teach them like, okay, where's this from? Like, in the chefs know, and they can tell the kids like, and so when another student who might grew up, eating china masala brings it to school, it's not something so strange. Like, what is that? And so it opens their minds to other parts of the world. And then they hire local artists to paint the cafeterias and to, do something that's locally motivating and things like that. So I love the community aspect, the international aspect of it that I never had the opportunity to do. And then did you know there was an organization that did that? I mean, just how interesting is this? So it's like, it opens my mind to, there's just not the typical, nonprofit or for-profit that you think is doing things. There are people doing amazing work in so many different ways.
Oh, for sure. For sure. No, I didn't know, and I had never heard of Red Rabbit, and now I'll be looking them up and adding them to the website and putting their link in the show notes, and hopefully some of our guests will be checking them out, and maybe if they have the ability to, give them a little extra boost financially or otherwise, maybe sharing them as well. So I will be doing that. That's so exciting. Well, oh, for sure. I'm so glad that really most of the organizations that my guests have lifted up, I haven't known about. And that has been such I mean, I wanted to add this part to the podcast, but it's such a lovely little thing, little addition at the end. And I have learned so much about the good that's been going on in the world. And I think that's really important to highlight that good that's going on in the world, because it's so easy. I mean, all you have to do is read, like this morning, my one email from NPR telling me what's going on in the world. And I keep it pretty limited to those things. And it's still like, the world feels so heavy if I start my day that way. But and I need to be aware of those things for sure. But we can also say, but there's cool organizations like Red Rabbit doing this really neat thing in New York and Philly and these places. And like, did you even know that? No. So how cool is that? Because there's a lot of people doing that kind of good in the world all the time. Yes. And they just don't get the headlines. That's the problem. Yeah. And that's part of what your agency is all about.
Hoping to, yeah, every day.
I feel like we've come full circle now, so where we wanted to go. Well, thank you so much, Catharine, again, for sharing your time and energy here on Just Rest, because I, again, don't take you offering your time and energy lightly. And I'm so glad to lift up the Better Together agency and Red Rabbit and all the other cool ideas we had conversation about. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Remember, rest is not a retreat from the work we do in the world. It is the work. So if you're ready to rest and resist, here's what to do next. If you know someone who's running on empty, please share it with them. Hit subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss a single episode. Rate and review us so that other radicals can find us. consider joining us on Substack at defythetrend.substack.com, where you'll find bonus content, tips for everyday living, community connection, and resources to keep you grounded. Radicals, remember, you are worthy of rest. I want to take a moment to thank the awesome humans who invested in Just Rest when it was just an idea. Without you, this podcast would literally not exist. Anissa Glazer-Bacon, Lindy Boosted, Ivy Beckwith, Catherine Beckett, Juliana Tiawanda, Julie Keck and Jess King, Jonna Jensen, Stephen Havelka, Ann Martin, Nicole Pickens, Beth Geddert, Becky Mollenkamp, Jenny Brown Daniel, Becky Sunday, Martha Lumley, Katie Habonic, Jennifer Gallus, Evelyn Pachidi, John Fry, Jenna Lee Beam, Carla Grauberger, Michelle Terigian, Jen Haggerty, M.K. O'Haver, Damian Shiner, Linda Oceans, Michelle Taylor, A.J. Knight, Kristen Lofermento, Becky Miles Polka, Nora Webster, Kim Romaine, Allie Kreider, Shelley Hovick, Dale Ann Gray, Sarah Presley, Lisa Hart, Anna Deshawn Rainey, Marcia Miller, and Melanie Miller. Thank you all so much for being a part of the Rest Rebels who made Just Rest become a reality.